Welcome to the Marketing Millennials, the No BS Marketing Podcast. I'm Daniel Murray, and join me for unfiltered conversations with the brains behind marketing's coolest companies. The one request I tell our guests, stories or it didn't happen. Get ready to turn the up. What is up, Brian? Welcome to the Marketing Millennials Podcast.
Hey, thanks, Daniel. It's awesome to be here. I appreciate you making some time.
Could you get a little background who you are, so just to set up the conversation for today?
I'm middle management overhead, brother. I am the CMO for Slack. I've been at Slack now for about a year and a half. You can see all the gray hairs. I've been around the industry for a while. Worked for about 20 years at Microsoft. Worked at AWS, where I helped build out the machine learning and AI practice there. And then I went in startup land, which is incredible. I was in the supply chain industry, kind of transforming trucking. Did that for about 4.5 years as the chief growth officer. And then, as I said, about a year and a half ago, joined Slack as part of Salesforce to really take Slack to the next level. It's been awesome.
I don't really see the gray hairs he's talking about, but he can claim it. He can claim it.
Yeah. We'll have to rename the podcast the Gen X podcast or something. Yeah.
I want to get into you are really in like the front lines of AI and work right now. So what is one thing you think marketers still get wrong about using AI in the day to day?
Oh man, how much time do we have on this podcast? It's hard to say get wrong. I think you have to just kind of start with the understanding that like work's going to change more in the next 5 years than it has in the last 25, like almost undoubtedly. Some things may stay the same, but it's going to fundamentally shift. And so every marketer, in fact, every person inside of every organization, really not just marketing, you kind of need to come in to your job with like a beginner's mindset. It's a bit of a cliche phrase, but you got to think about what would this job or what would this task look like if I was to start this company today in the age of AI, and what would I do differently? So if you are, working in email automation, or you are working in, like product-led growth, or, trying to optimize a conversion funnel or whatever it could be, how would you do it differently if you had just one person and a whole host of AI tools? And what would your process be, and how would you go about it? And if you're not kind of starting, all the things that you do with that kind of open-ended question and asking like, all right, how do I rethink this entirely in the age of AI and the age of agents? You really are behind. And there's really no nice way to say it, because it is going to change that quickly. And those leaders and those marketers are going to embrace the latest tools and capabilities are going to just far outstrip those who aren't. And it's change, and sometimes change is a little bit scary. Everyone approaches AI with a different mindset. We've done research where there's people who, think of AI as like, wow, this is these superpowers as tools. I'm so excited to go use them. And there's others on the other side of the spectrum that have like, is it okay to use these tools? I don't want to tell people I'm using it. It feels like I'm cheating. So I kind of like hide that I use it. And there's some people who are really nervous and scared to use it and don't want to use these tools. And so, everyone kind of approaches it with their own starting point. But it is going to be pretty transformative. And there's a lot of transformation that, has to happen in the marketing space that we're barely scratching the surface of.
I think that you make a good point of like where people are, because they are different point of views out there, where some people think if you're using AI for certain things, you're not doing your job as a marketer, or you're not doing your job, or you're being lazy at work because you're using something else. But I would argue it's productivity instead of laziness. You're doing more with your time. If you're doing it straight out without using any of your brain power and strategy and experience, then maybe the argument would come into that. But
yeah, totally. I mean, I think the thing I was thinking about, I was talking to someone the other day, and at Slack, we have this, Salesforce has this incredible platform called Agentforce. And so we have all these agents that we get to deploy for employees, and they get to kind of use these agents to augment their productivity. And one of the things I was kind of, thinking about is like, we've had all this explosion of tools over the last, 20 years. Like, just think about the number of new like applications and SaaS tools that have launched the space. It's not like anyone's going home any earlier. Like, we're still filling up the day with work. The question is just, you're getting more done. Ideally, you're doing higher value work. Ideally, that work is having greater return for the business. But it's not like anyone's like, hey, cool, it's a 3-day work week now. That doesn't exist. So we're all being asked to do more. And unless we're kind of embracing some of these tools, it's going to be really, really hard to keep up, because like the compression algorithm is doing what it always has done, which is expect more for less.
What is a few ways your marketing team at Slack uses AI to get done more with less?
Yeah, I mean, we feel pretty blessed, honestly. I mean, I'll tell you a couple examples. One personal example. So when I joined Slack, just like I'm sure many of your listeners, a lot of folks, you join a new company and you're learning the culture, you're learning all the new tools and processes, you're learning the people and all this kind of stuff. And that learning curve is kind of daunting anytime you take on a new job. And, whatever, I'm a middle management executive, whatever. So I have all these people who are like, hey, we're going to help you and we'll create documents for you and all this kind of wonderful stuff. My number one onboarding tool when I joined Slack and Salesforce, number one, without a doubt, was Slack AI, which was, so Slack AI basically allows, so if your listeners aren't familiar with Slack is this incredible kind of work operating system collaboration tool that allows organizations to really kind of orchestrate all of their work. But one of the most amazing things about it is it also stores your company's long-term memory. So you think about, Slack's been around for greater than 10 years. All the conversations that have happened while the company was building, all the conversations that happened when it was having its first customer meetings, all the conversations that have happened since, strategy reviews, et cetera, all those live in Slack. And those conversations, because the way Slack is architected, I have permissions to all the public ones. So if you create a channel in Slack, there's permissions you can set, and some of them are public, means everyone can have access to, and some of them are private, meaning a set of people. And I have access to those public ones as well as some of the private ones. Well, previously, those conversations were kind of like just trapped. Like they happened, they went away, and then you never really see them again and you never hear from them again. Well, what happened with Slack AI is we're able to query those conversations. So myself, as a new employee coming in, someone would be talking about something I have no idea what they're talking about. I could just quietly rock up to Slack AI and ask it a natural language question. Like an example is Salesforce uses this thing called the V2 Mom, which is a way of our setting our vision and our values and the measures and methods of our goals for the year. And someone said it like on my first day. I was like, I have no clue what you're talking about. So I just go up like, what's a V2 Mom? And there I get this full, rich answer. I also could go do things like, hey, the founder of Slack was a guy named Stuart Butterfield. I could ask Slack of like, hey, show me the original presentation Stuart did to the first set of customers. And what was the original visions like he had for Slack? Because all those conversations are there. That long-term memory exists. And I could query it. I was rocking up to Slack AI like 10, 12 times a day just to like get insights and understand. And it was this amazing treasure trove of insights. And those are the types of things where it's one example of AI able to tap into this long-term memory of a company, which has previously really just sat there and been idle. So that's one example. I could give you like 50 others. We do a ton with agents in Slack, which is basically how every single employee gets their own workforce. And that's pretty darn cool. I'm happy to talk more about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, first you want to describe, like, for the people who don't know, like, if someone says I'm using like AI versus like using an AI agent, like what the two differences, and then like what are some like cool use cases that people should be thinking about using for agentic AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great clarification. So, AI obviously gets thrown around. It's like it's the drinking game du jour. So every time someone says you have to take a shot, kind of thing. I don't, it's 8 a.m. here, so I don't expect you to be doing that, Daniel. But if you want to, I'm just saying it might be fun. It might spice up the podcast. So think about like AI capabilities broadly, where it can be doing anything from, what you see inside of, ChatGPT or Gemini, or, here's suggestions for your writing, or I'm going to summarize this podcast, or I'm going to create a podcast for you. So these broad applications of AI. What happens with agents and where agents get really powerful and there's really kind of a couple elements of it. Is agents can then go beyond the AI insights, and then they can really start to take action on your behalf. And what makes agents really powerful is I can then deploy an agent. Let's say what we do inside of Slack with Agentforce is we deploy agents that have specific tasks and skills, just like teammates. So an example being, we have an engineering agent that we built here at Salesforce. One of the challenges that happens at a big company at scale is we roll out all of these products, and all these products have lots of technical depth and details to them. And as our sellers go out and sell them, they're working with customers, or our customer success teams are working, they'll have questions about implementation details, et cetera. And typically those questions would go back to a Slack channel, and we'd have a bunch of, expensive, in reality, engineers who would help our customer success and our sales teams answer those questions, and then, help them take action on it. Well, we built this engineering agent, and this engineering agent was then wired up with all the knowledge of all of our knowledge bases, all of the details of these products, all the past history of questions that we've answered on these topics. And this engineering agent, then we deployed it inside of a Slack channel. So now when a sales leader or a customer success team is going and they have a question on the product, they go into, and this engineering agent is the one that's actually answering the question. And I honestly, you sit there, you watch it in Slack, it's an unbelievable thing to watch, because you're like, holy crap, this is working. And what happened is, in 6 months, this thing had to answer over 18,000 questions. The success rate in terms of being able to answer them was a 76% accuracy, meaning it was able to ask, the question was asked and answered and closed out. It didn't need to be handed off to a human. And then you can kind of even go beyond. These agents can then take actions and say, hey, great, I see you've answered that question. Now, can you actually create me a Canvas doc that can summarize this for my customer and summarize the next step the customer needs to take? So the agent now has the autonomy to go and take that action on your behalf, and is now doing that work for you. And you can go to bed, go get a cup of coffee or whatever. The agent does the work, and you're ready to rock and roll with the customer. So these agents become incredibly powerful. I mean, this one example I just gave you, the engineering agent, we saw it save over 250,000 of engineering hours, 250,000. And then, we projected if we built that out across all the different topics that we have, it would be $20 million or $20 million hours saved. We deployed that agent across, a dozen different channels. We're going to deploy it across 700 million channels. And literally the projection is it's $20 million of engineering hours saved. And there's not a lot of $20 million ideas just walking around, inside of companies. And so these are the types of things that we're seeing inside of Slack, that we're doing as part of Salesforce, that, every customer out there is thinking about. And we're working with some really cool ones that are doing the exact same type of stuff.
I want to also ask you I know you said you use Slack AI to query past conversations, so you can stay up conversations and meetings and have the history and be able to create more alignment in the team. But what are some things that if you were talking to other marketing leaders, what would you suggest they should use in their day-to-day to make them more productive as a marketing leader? And or the other question is how would you suggest them empower their team to use AI in more of an efficient way?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another one where, there's so many incredible tools out there that you can be looking at. Our team recently redid, we have an email system. Our team recently kind of redid all of our email stack, essentially kind of with an AI first mindset, like I was talking about a little bit earlier, to go through and think about not only just who we send emails to, the copy that we use, how do we optimize the timing, all that kind of stuff. And you can go back and take something as simple and as antiquated. I kind of hate email, honestly, but we still have to send them. You can take something as antiquated as sending emails, and you can go through and really go and build out a full optimization. And despite all the work that's been done in something like email optimization over the last 10 years, there's still way more that can happen. And AI actually takes it a whole nother level. So we're seeing incredible results with that. The other one, maybe on the other end of the spectrum, that's a little bit more out there, is how do you start to reimagine your customer experience in an agent first world? And what I mean by that is, what happens in the world where no one's ever going to go to your website anymore? there's going to be an agent first internet. And like, there's estimates out there. There's a Mary Meeker report I read recently. It talked about this idea of like, there's a billion people who are about to go over the next, 5-10 years or whatever it is, and experience products and experience without ever going to your website or ever going to any content that you've created. Like, it's all going to be behind agents. And so what does a website look like that's agent first, or where the interactions and experiences someone's having with your brand are all through an LLM? And then they're making a decision to purchase based off of all that information. We're seeing that right now inside of Slack. It's one of the interesting trends. You marketers talk about SEO and all the, funnel optimization and bringing people in, blah, blah, blah. The reality is people are doing more of their research in ChatGPT and Gemini and Anthropic and all these other tools. And then they're coming straight in and they're ready to sign up for Slack. And so like the traditional optimization of how do you get someone to your website and then to click on this button and move through that, like all that's getting passed through. And so what would your website look like if it was just agent based and, started with a search based experience that was conversational? That's a lot of what we do inside of Slack is, you start with like a conversational first experience. There's two ends of the spectrum. Like one is like the traditional, the T's and C's of marketing and all the wonderful stuff that people do. And how do you reimagine that with AI, all the AI tools and capabilities? And then the other one is like, hey, how do you get ahead of where the puck's going and really think about a totally different experience on some of the things that have been pretty fundamental for the last, 2 decades. I don't know. Does that make any sense, Daniel?
No, it makes total sense because, for example, I bet you a lot of marketers out there are searching like what is the best like productivity tool to like for a marketing team to chat with their like internally, and probably Slack was probably coming up there, and then they go deeper like what is Slack, and they're asking, they're not even like going on Google to search that. They're just having conversation. I mean, I do it all the time just to see what what pops up to stay ahead, just to say like, and then what I do is like reverse engineer and saying like what sources are they tracking back to see what websites are they querying.
Totally.
That's a question I had for you is like, so if you like work backwards from like all those people who are searching Slack in these tools, what are some ways you are thinking are helping you show up more in traditional, like all these AI chats?
Yeah, I mean, there's everything from some of the traditional elements of like, are you adding the right schema to your pages? Are you doing the right indexing of your pages? Some of like the, what I'll call like really, really good traditional SEO work. But there's a lot of companies out there now, and there's a lot of good research you can go read of like, what does an LLM look for that's different than traditional Google search engines or Microsoft search engines? And there you're really getting into longer form descriptive content. You're getting into places where like you've got better built out answers, and you've got that index really, really well, and you can go and build out that content set that is going to be more appealing and for an LLM that's looking for the next best word and the next best answer. And so you really have to kind of get into this like next wave of like, what is the LLMs looking for and how do you optimize for? And the reality, anyone's lying if it says it's not a bit of a black box. It's a total black box. Like there's no formula thing. Like these LLMs are evolving every single day. No one can tell you exactly why it picked what it picked, but you can look at the patterns and practices, and you can go and then try to optimize for those patterns. But that's kind of the game that you have to kind of be in nowadays, particularly as web traffic is going to most likely continue to drop in favor of kind of where things are moving with LLMs. The other one, just to kind of jog my memory a little bit on the big one that I'm seeing where a lot of customers are leaning in or marketers are leaning in is kind of the age old challenge of, hey, I generate all of these leads and I generate all of this, marketing opportunities, and my sellers never follow up on them. Like probably one of the biggest areas I'm seeing customers deploying things like Agentforce is on this like lead routing, lead optimization, where you can go through like Box, I think has like a, did a bunch of work with Box and Agentforce, and they did like a 500% improvement in like their lead optimization. And you just get far better signals on what are quality leads. And then you can do a lot of the qualification work with agents before it actually gets to the sellers. And that becomes pretty powerful as well. Like basically the SDR role gets replaced with agents in many cases, and that becomes far more effective.
Yeah, I remember back, like, I mean, even just like 10 years ago, where like our lead routing formulas were all in Google Sheets, and they took
Yeah.
like weeks and weeks to like optimize based on new data that you had to pull into like a Google Sheet or Excel, and then have to like feed it back in to keep changing. But now like you could just feed these things into AI and it does it in like 5 minutes for you, which is like, which would took you 3-4 weeks 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about.
Totally. I was just talking to Anthropic. They have a deal desk where they deployed agents working with humans, and they increased like their deal desk velocity by like 60% with like Agentforce and agents. Like it really is nuts how fast you can move on some of this stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I also think is, which I think is an advantage for like companies that have been storing data, is like, how are you using these like past internal, basically like first party data or like first party like content that you have created for the last 10 years, and then deploying that now as like content for your customers? Because back in the day, you would have to like sift through all these conversations you've had with customers, these Salesforce records, Slack conversations, whatever you're having with like group conversations you've had with customers, and it took hours to sift through just to make a testimonial or case study or anything. But now, like, what are some things you're using it for, like internal Slack things that you built up knowledge bases to deploy for marketing material now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly what you're poking on, but it triggers for me a little bit. There's one of the, again, really cool uses of AI, again, is there's so much knowledge that's trapped in these conversations. Like conversations are context, and context matters. So, we have Slack channels for everything, obviously, at Slack, and we've got all these account channels for all the teams that are, working with IBM or EasyCater or Slalom or whatever it is. And you think about all those conversations are happening in those channels, and there's tons and tons and tons of context in those channels. Well, one of the things we've done is we've also taken all that conversational context and we've connected it to what's considered structured data. So look at like the data that actually sits in the CRM, and we brought that into Slack with a new capability called Salesforce Channels, where it's basically bringing all those opportunity records, all those contacts, where's the deal at, where's the process, with all the conversations that are happening, hey, we're getting ready for this meeting, how do we prep for it, etc. And now with AI, you can go through and you can look at all that and say, cool, agent, sales agent, which we have, generate for me a customer brief that is ready to go for this meeting. So when I'm, getting asked to go meet with a customer, etc., the past process oftentimes would be, hey, some account team member or many account team members are going to spend 4 or 5 hours creating a briefing doc for me. Here's everything you need to know. Here's what the account's up to. Da, 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 da. So now with AI, with these sales agents, we can just point it at this structured data and this unstructured data that all lives inside of Slack and say, create an account brief for Ryan. Make sure it emphasizes the latest opportunities. Make sure it gives an overview of what's going on with the executives, and please give them, a summarization of the account history from the last 3 years. Boom! Like I get this beautiful canvas in Slack. It's ready to go. No one had to spend any time working on it. Agent did all the work. And then honestly, and no offense to all my lovely sales teams, it's way better than the briefing docs that I used to get from the sellers. So that is an example. You talked about more like customer evidence and stuff like that, but that same applies to customer evidence. You can just roll that out. Yeah.
It's all this context that you've missed for a long time. Like when you ask like sellers are not going to be able to like remember every conversation for the last 3 years, or but that also makes me a point, like what are some things that inside, because some of these things are as good as how people enter it into their CRM or the questions they ask in the conversations with the customers. Because if you ask bad questions, or you don't get enough information, or you put bad data into Salesforce, it could be spitting out things that are,
it's
and
garbage
it's
in,
not
garbage
like
out.
anybody's fault, but it could be spitting out things that are going to lead you down the wrong path. So what are some ways now that are you encouraging like better questions or better data entry? I mean, before, like, I remember we used to have like rules, like you have to enter these fields, and we would go to, like, as marketing ops, I would have to go audit, like, did they put enough data into the field and stuff like that, which agents probably can do now, but like back in the day, you had to audit like all these records at weekly of like, did you put in the right data? Is this the right information needed for
I feel like,
us?
Daniel, you have some scars from that. I'm sensing the pain from your past. Totally. Like garbage in, garbage out is always going to be a challenge. And, at least in my experience, telling people they have to do something, or, putting rules in place only gets you so far, and typically it just makes people resent it, because they're like, I'm actually trying to do my job, and like, why do I need to, like, I'm not a data entry person. So the real question is how do you make it just brain dead easy for whether it's a marketer, a marketing ops person, or a seller to share the data that's important and have that data get updated to a system of record. So, in the future, like, I've got an agent in Slack, and let's say you and I just got out of a customer meeting. Well, shouldn't I just be able to tell the agent, like, hey, Daniel and I just met with Plative. Plative's got an opportunity and they need help on these 5 things. I'd like to do a follow-up call with them in 3 weeks. We think the opportunity is maybe $1 million for, these 3 products. Please make sure that these 5 people are aware, and schedule that follow-up call for me. Done. Right. The CRM gets updated. The meeting gets scheduled. The right people get an email or a note in Slack from the agent, and like, you're on to your next thing. Versus before, I'd sit down and say, all right, now I got to launch my CRM. I got to up at the opportunity. Then I've got to go into my calendar and set up that meeting. Now I need to send the follow-up notes. Now I need to send a Slack message to the other people. I need to be aware. Like, that is the level of kind of reimagining with things like Slack and Agentforce that companies are able to start to go do. And I picked Plative because there's a customer that we're working with that's doing exactly that. They have agents that they built and deployed in Slack that basically they think about, all right, we have an account research agent, we've got a call prep agent, we've got a summary agent. And they've built all these agents with Agentforce that say, how do we take all the things that when our seller is not selling and have agents go do all that work, and marketers can go support that. And they've cut their sales and their prep time for meetings like in half from all the work that they previously used to go do. And that's all that's time that all can be deployed to generating more value for the company. So
that makes a sense. I remember, like, I think the stat, I think it was like 5 years ago, that 40% of sales people's times are just like that manual data entry, call scheduling, all that stuff. So if you take 40% done by an agent, now they're selling 100% of the time, or let's say 90% of the time, because there's some work they have to do, but that are outside. But like 90% versus like 60% is a huge like productivity jump for a sales rep to be able to sell.
It's one of the number one reasons why so many customers are come to us with the same story, which is, hey, despite all these tools, technologies, even the advent of AI over the last several years, where it's really exploded, at least, work is still broken, man. Like, people are still wasting time on like the work of work. There's stats out there. You can read them all over the place. Like 40% of the time people are spent just looking for stuff, like looking for information. People, context switching is a massive work productivity challenge. People are switching anywhere between like 11 and 13 apps every single day. And you think about like all that context switching is lost time, and you get distracted, you get pulled into something else. And it's one of the reasons why Slack has continued to do so well, because it really serves as this command center, this kind of work operating system where employees are like, all right, this is where my people are. I'm deploying my agents to my people. I'm bringing the agents to them. I'm not asking people to go someplace else. I'm connecting in all my enterprise applications. And then this is the work hub. And that's how you start to get to this kind of agentic productivity levels that have really escaped us for for quite a while because we are still wasting a lot of time every single day. And many companies are.
What are some ways, like, let's go into Slack, because I've used it since it came out in every company. So I know, like,
Oh,
I've been
nice.
in Slack for, so what are like your top three things that, like, if you're structuring a marketing team in Slack, like communication wise, or like any type of channel, what are the top three tips that you would give to a marketing team to do in Slack today that will help them be more productive?
Oh, that's interesting. I've had I'll tell my own journey with Slack. I will, and just in full transparent, I'll answer your question, but I'll show you how I
Yeah,
kind of got there.
yeah.
I obviously I was at 20 years at Microsoft, so I used Teams and things like that. AWS, when I joined there, had its own solution. It now uses Slack, which is great. But back then it didn't. And then I joined this startup. And I remember that was my first exposure to Slack. And I came in there and I'm all right. I'm going to be the chief growth officer and blah, blah, blah. And get into Slack and I'm like, what is this thing? And I was like, all these conversations are going on and there's all these, everyone's just in there and there's emojis flying everywhere. And I was kind of like, huh, I'm like, we're here for like a serious purpose. And this doesn't feel like a serious tool. And I don't know, man. And someone's like, hey, we've got this service issue with this customer. We're spinning up a Slack channel. I'm like, you can't resolve a customer issue in Slack. What are you talking about? This is like important work. And man, how little I knew nothing. I was such an idiot. And so I kind of got exposed and I was like, wow, over this course of this 4 years, I was like, holy cow, this is like this tool that when used really, really well is like this ultimate, not just orchestration hub, but it's a place where, people can like bring the company together. It's like a culture builder. You can swarm and bring people in very, very quickly and then disband. And like, it has this like connective tissue because it's built like this consumer grade software. It's not built like an enterprise piece of software. It's like built for consumers. That people actually just generally love. And so I became this fan of Slack for the 4 years that I was there. And then I got the chance to work and come to Slack. And man, I had no clue how little I knew how to use Slack before I joined Slack, the company. Like, I thought I was like, hey, I'm a power user. I use it every day, blah, blah, blah. I had no clue. So, to answer your question in terms of like how to set things up and tips and tricks, obviously, we are really, really heavy. Like channels is the backbone for everything we do. So if we're starting a effort, initiative, a project, a planning session, it all starts with a channel. We really try to not be in a bunch of like multi-person messages. Those are like just one-off if you need have a conversation with, you or a handful of people. But if it's going to be something that's going to be, longer than a week or 2 weeks, we spin up a channel. And I spend a lot of time organizing my channels because we have a lot of them and it can go prioritize them. And then, those channels become the lifebeat of the organization. And so one of the things that, we see a lot of customers do, we certainly do, is quickly give the channel context. So we have a capability called Canvas, which is kind of a synchronous document that you can build out. You populate with all the details of everything you want going on in that channel or the resources or everything that's related to it. You can build out the tabs of that channel so it has additional context that's needed, workflows that are associated with it, et cetera. So once that channel's set up, like that's the lifeblood for that effort. So, whenever you're working on it, I just do a quick like Command K and I can go in, I find that channel, I jump in there, I can get updated. And then we have tools like AI tools that if I'm like out on vacation or if I've not been paying close attention to that project, I get channel summaries. So I can use AI to quickly say, hey, catch me up. Like, give me the AI summary of what's been happening for this. And I'll get like a 5 or 6, 7 bullet point overview of like all the activity of maybe like 150 channel messages. I can just get caught up in those in like seconds through AI. So channels is one. Like if you orient your work around channels, it's a game changer. The other things, I look at is workflows. Workflows are like these no-code workflows where you can just simply set up and automate processes. I I knew what workflows were. I used them lightly before I got to Slack. Like, we use them extensively here, and they're incredible from a time saving. Now you can do AI generated workflows. So you can actually have AI create the workflows for you versus, what was before was kind of just like describing the workflow that you wanted. Those workflows do everything as simple as like automate questions for our all hands meetings when we want to get people together, to basic things that we need to go do, like, hey, we need to go complete this survey, all the way through to way more complex work that we want to go do that's like automated on the back end. So workflows and heavy use of workflows would be another one. And then the third, as I talked about, is agents. The cool thing about what we've done with Agentforce and Slack is we said, hey, a design principle of Slack that I love is don't make me think. Right. And so the product and engineering team that built Slack, which did an incredible job, really started off and said, hey, how do we have features that just, I shouldn't have to think about, I shouldn't have this cognitive load. And we took that same approach with agents. So agents should just feel like teammates. And I know how to work with a teammate. Daniel, you're my teammate. I know how to DM you. I know how to add you to a channel. I know how to ask you to do something. Agents should work the same way. So in Slack, we have like all of this repository for, I can click on a button called Agentforce and I can see all the agents that are available to me. And I can see, just like a person, I can see what's their skills, what they can do, what's their role. So I can easily go through and find an agent that has like a sales agent or an engineering agent or an onboarding agent. I can know what they're doing. I can add them to a channel just like I would you, Daniel. I just add that agent in. I can ask that agent questions just like I would you. And I can ask it to take actions in Slack. So create a canvas or create a new DM or send a message. And those agents just have the same skills that humans would. And so they really start to feel like human teammates and human collaborators. And you can use them right inside of Slack. And it's really like every single employee gets to get this capability upgrade. And that's the cool thing for marketers right now. I think, if I step all the way back, like if you think about where you're at in your career or what your job is or what your role is, my encouragement, I guess, is step back and say, put that down for a second. Like, so maybe you identify yourself as a social marketer, or maybe you identify yourself as someone who does marketing ops or whatever. Well, the reality is with agents now, you get to be whatever you want. So maybe you're someone who is really good at design, but not really good at content. Well, it turns out you can hire an agent, have it work for you, and be incredible at content. Or maybe it's the vice versa. You're great at content, but you're stink at design. Well, it turns out you can hire an agent, have it work for you, and you can be incredible at design. So every employee in marketing, and in fact, across every line of business, just got a capability upgrade with things like Agentforce. And when you deploy those in Slack, every employee who says, hey, I want to manage a team, turns out you can. You've got a whole team of agents that are going to work for you. And that's pretty exciting when you think about the capability upgrade that everyone's about to get with things like Agentforce.
One thing on I love that. I also think that for like people who are not, also don't necessarily love doing certain things, or like that's like something they hate in their job. Let's say they hate documentation, because that's something I hated as like an ops person. But now, like, I wish I had agents back then to help me. Like, I could talk through what I'm doing with this process, and it documents what I do, and they put it in the documentation doc, and that would have saved me so many time where I had to like spend a day documenting like what this email flow does, like what it should be doing, like the buttons and clicks. It's just so like now I can hire basically a documentation person, a process person under me, instead of like having to, or back then you would have to hire someone to like that their whole role would be documentation of flows.
It's incredible. Yeah, totally. It's a game changer, and it's a good example because it frees, in that scenario, like it gives you a day back to go do the stuff that you actually want to do, and things that will add real value for the company.
And it also gets you like more excited employees, because like that aspect of the job made me not like pick companies that weren't necessarily like heavy on that stuff. Like that's why I love startups, because it was scrappy and like I started document, but it wasn't like the whole thing was like, oh, document. Now I would have loved any size company because I could document with an AI. But
totally.
two more questions for you. One is like, I know you said like if you're good at design, like you can hire a content person or something, but like how much do you think like actual like experience and context and taste comes into like knowing that content person is doing a good job for you? Because like
Yeah.
I think like you have to have some level of it to be like this is actually a good piece of like a decent piece, or like writing a good piece
Yeah.
of content for me versus not.
Yeah. I mean, you remind me of a story that I was, previously when I worked at my startup. This is not at Slack, but we were working on a project and we were using heavy applications of machine learning models for a particular pricing algorithm. And I remember someone who worked for me, I was questioning a bunch of reasons, like, what was going on here? What was going on here? Something didn't feel quite right in terms of what pricing was generating. And the individual said, well, that's what the model said. And I was like, that's never an acceptable answer. So like kind of what you're getting at is this idea that, we can't turn our brains off in this process. Like we are going to have this unbelievable set of capability upgrades. We're going to have all these agents who are doing work, but we absolutely cannot turn our brains off and just assume that what those digital teammates created is right or is as best as it could be. And we kind of the human curators of all this need to continue to be very, very present and curious and intellectually curious of like, oh, so it came back with that. Why? Is that the right thing? And if you think about our roles, particularly as marketers, I think of we need to switch in many cases, not all, but in many cases, we need to switch from like doers of the work to orchestrators of the work. So if you just imagine yourself as like you just became the CMO of whatever you're responsible for. So, what do I get to do all day long as the CMO for Slack? Well, I like to do some things, but the reality is most of my time is in meetings, looking at stuff that other people have done and providing perspectives on it, input on it, direction on it, helping to craft strategy, helping to encourage people to go a little bit further here or think a little bit differently over here. Most of my time is spent in orchestrating and coaching and setting direction. Well, that should be now everyone's job. So everyone starts to become an orchestrator. And when you're becoming an orchestrator of work, it's your job to question the work that's coming back to you. It's your job to inspect it. It's your job to understand, is this good or high quality? And to find mechanisms to see, is this accurate or not accurate? And how are you going to do that? So that is one of the new next challenges that we have, is we all become orchestrators of work. If you outsource that document processing that we talked about earlier, that used to take a day on, how would you audit it to know it was good before you handed it off to your boss to say, hey, cool, this is done? And we have to find ways to answer that question. And there's no simple answer. There's no kind of, you just do this, because the reality is these models are a black box and you can't quickly go and see exactly what it did, why it did it. And so you have to be intellectually curious and present in all these types of things. And your question was on taste, and I kind of took it a little bit more broadly, but taste comes back to like, well, cool. How are you going to judge the quality of that? One of the things my team now has to do religiously, like, so if they're producing a piece of content or they're producing a piece of blog, one of the things I expect is when it comes to me for review, I want to see the grade that they got from Gemini or ChatGPT. So like one of the things that is take that piece of content, write a pretty robust prompt about like who's the content for, what's the intent, who's the audience, obviously, what's the goals of the content, and then have the LLMs grade like, tell me the key messages, tell me the top takeaways, give me a grade of this content relative to these best in class pieces of content. And so you can and sometimes use these tools to grade your work and to evaluate your work. And that's something I expect my team to do before something gets to me. Like they have better gone through and use these tools to like really not just refine the writing or refine the outputs or refine the design, but actually grade the design. And actually then you use that to uncover potentially some places where maybe something's wrong or something can be better. So not a simple answer, but that's a
no, I like that. I think I do it all the time with like, I've done it with like, hiring like a writer before like
Mm,
I like had my like all my stuff that I know is good, and like we asked them to do stuff, and I asked like based on all this content, how close is it to like all like my audience, my tone of voice, this.
yeah.
And like some people came back with like C's, and some people came back with like A pluses. So it's like it's crazy when you do that as like a QA process too. It helps a lot. The last question I have for you is, and I ask everybody on this podcast, is what is a marketing hill you would die on?
Ooh, meaning like something that would be like, hey, this is like a principle or a
Yeah.
wow, marketing hill I would die. I firmly believe in like the line like the marketing is the product is the marketing. And so I will never be part of an organization or I'll never be a part of a team where there is a divide between marketing and product. And if I ever felt that that was the case, that would be the first thing I would be like, hey, cool. Like that's not the place for me. Like any chuck it over the fence kind of stuff doesn't work. Like the reality is like modern marketing is about understanding deeply like the usage of the product, the telemetry of the product, why a customer clicked on this part of the product or not. And like marketing goes all the way through the depth of usage of whatever you're selling and understanding that intuitively. And then every moment inside the product is a marketing moment. You know, every opportunity you have to merchandise a new feature is a marketing moment. And marketing is not the stuff that sits at the top of the funnel or sits on the outside or just gets somebody in the front door. It has to be deeply woven through, and you have to have a company and a culture that wants to experiment at every little stage of product usage and funnel. And unless you have that, marketing gets pretty boring pretty quickly, in my opinion. You get to, we kind of we're sitting out this outer tier and we help sales and all that stuff's fine and good. But that's not the lever. Like, the levers for any business are the product, and then obviously kind of the sellers that are out there, driving customers. And marketing is really this, thin thing in the middle. And, oftentimes is only as good as the ideas that we bring to impacting those levers. And if you have any divide between those two, it's a pretty unfulfilling thing to go do. So I think if the marketing is not the product and the product's not the marketing, if that's not the ethos of the organization, that would be the hill I go to die on.
Just one more follow up on that. Like, what is
Yeah.
something that like someone could audit when like in the interview process that the company is not, that connective process is not there? Like, what is something you've asked about to make sure like they are connected?
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of look at like something like cultural, and you can look at like something more systemic. One question is asked like, hey, show me the last, or talk to me about the last 30 or 40 in product marketing tests you've done for optimizing usage and engagement. Like, talk to me about like what's your testing model and testing matrix for changing, these words or this engagement layer or, notifying users at this moment in time. And if they don't have a good culture and of like, oh yeah, like we've got this experimentation culture where we can go in and our marketers can help us ideate on what are the next best action for anyone to go take, that's a sign that they're probably not doing what I just talked about. The other one is to ask like, hey, what are your best, marketers that sit in your product reviews? Like, so if you don't have great, if marketing's not a seat at the table in like product strategy, product reviews, all that kind of stuff, it's another good sign that they're not thinking that way.
Yeah, I think those two are great. And last question I have for you is where could people find what you're doing or anything you're up to?
Me personally, or
You or Slack, like you could talk
yeah,
about any. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can always bang me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to say hi and connect with anyone. But yeah, I would say keep watching the space closely with Slack and Agentforce. It is, as I kind of said, I think at the beginning, like this work is going to change so much over the next 5 years. And, what was the crazy stat? It took like ChatGPT 17 months to get to like the 500 million users. And it took like Netflix 10 years to get to 100 million users. Like we're moving at light speed now. And so I really just say watch this space closely. We feel really fortunate with Slack and Salesforce that we're out in front of this movement. We feel like we're really helping to set it for companies like EasyCater and Box and Remarkable and IBM and all these others. And so it's a fun but evolving space, and just encourage folks to stay really plugged in and engaged on it, because it is going to change quickly. And those who are staying, really connected to the latest opportunities are going to be the marketers that are going to distinguish themselves. Those marketers that are showing up every single day and saying, how would I reimagine what I do in an AI and agent first world? Those are the marketers that, employers like myself are going to be like, yes, I want that individual on my team, because that's what we have to go do right now.
Well, thank you so much. And go check out Slack and what they're doing, and also Salesforce, because I know you guys are together now. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Daniel, man, I really appreciate it, and continued best of luck, and congrats on all your success as well, man. It's been fun.
Thanks so much for listening. Keep tuning in to hear more great insights from the coolest marketers from around the world. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow the Marketing Millennials podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, I would greatly appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating. It helps bring more marketers into our community.